Hello, everybody. Good to be with you. Um, Boy, I'm excited about this talk. Um, have been praying and pondering ideas of what to share. There's so many different tools and principles when it comes to generalized anxiety. My name's Eric, and I'm a professional therapist and coach. And during the course of these last few weeks, I thought, I should just give tools to help people with anxiety, generalized anxiety in a generalized way. This isn't meant to be therapy. This is meant to be educational. But I think education goes a long way. I do a lot of that in therapy and in coaching. So I want to begin tonight by talking about what causes us anxiety. So many people I shouldn't say it this way, but many people I work with want to add something. They're like oriented to let me add something to my life that is going to help me with anxiety. Maybe it's because give me a pill, give me an herb, give me a tool, give me an exercise. I want to add something to try to make this go away. I can relate. By the way, maybe that's why we're oriented this way, because we live in a society where something is on the internet or on TV or in the mail that says, if you do this, buy this product, add this to your life, and your anxiety will get better. For sure, there is something to be said about adding to your life. But tonight we're going to talk about taking away things. When we were kids, I remember instead of subtract or minus, when I was first learning addition and subtraction, it was called takeaway. 5 take away 1 was 4. 10 take away 2 is 8. So it was takeaway. So tonight we're going to be doing take away those things that might be the source of our anxiety. Before we begin, I have a little exercise. I have a cup of fake coffee. I love this fake coffee. And just to give you an idea, let's see, there you go. I've set it here, if you can see that. Let's come closer. And I'm just going to put it away. There. So, how does that make you feel? Okay. How do you feel seeing that? Okay. If I do this, I'm going to do it just like that. And I can do my talking here. Let me I'll do my talking here, and you're welcome to respond. But can I do the whole podcast tonight by showing that like that? Since I'm doing the exercise, I don't feel that anxious. But, for a lot of us, this would be anxiety producing. And I suppose we could ponder the question, like, why? Like, why does this cause us anxiety? Now, there's a few people out there, bless their hearts, that probably don't feel any anxiety, and they're probably not watching this podcast. But for those of us who are sensitive, into security, not into a lot of risk, this is just going to make us nervous. We're just going to, and the question is, why does this make us nervous? Probably it's because it feels like it's going to fall. And if it falls, it creates a mess. If it creates a mess, then what? This is black liquid. Now I could move my hands. I even had enough thought that if I'm just demonstrating this, and it could really fall on the ground, just add it to some of the list of things we've done here on live stream. But what happens if I do this? Do you feel better? What if I do that? Okay. So the purpose is to help us be aware of our feelings and to notice when we get anxious and what makes us anxious and how much threshold, like how much of something causes us anxiety. If I move something this direction, does it make me feel better? If I move something another direction, does it make me feel worse? So it's actually very simple and very natural to do this. I'm not sure why I didn't think about it or people don't use it more, but we're talking feedback loop. That if you do something and it works well, then you continue doing that. If you do something and you can assess that that didn't work well, then you change your behavior, you change your life. We do this all the time with eating. If we eat something and it settles with me, I feel good afterwards, and I feel good like 4 to 6 hours, and it builds muscles and nutrients help build a better brain, then we'll probably do it more. If we feel sick after eating that, we probably won't do that again. I said hello to my coworker as I was rushing out the door to get ready for this, and they were saying, I have my keys. Yeah, that's a feedback loop. We change something to make things go better. Last week, a coworker got locked out. So having a backup system. So well, let me tell you a few stories. So I've had people do things that are causing anxiety, but they're just not aware. It's just not there. And I can share this. This isn't going to identify any personal health information, but this person was just very, 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 very anxious, just very, very nervous. And only one session, I shared those tools and skills, etc. Found out that she was doing, well, silly me, I asked, are you doing anything like medication or drug or something that could cause anxiety? Learned that they use a lot of marijuana. I said, well, that could actually be the cause of anxiety. And the look in their eyes just got really nervous, like, that's what helps me feel better. And it's like, well, actually, that could be also the source of the cause. And prior to this, she was talking about, I just don't want to end up in a hospital. Can you help me not end up in a hospital? Because she was so anxious that she felt like she was going to be in a hospital. Her husband was there. And sure enough, he was nervous too. Like, oh no. Like, she would have to give up marijuana. Well, I'm not saying anybody has to give up anything. I'm just saying it could be a potential cause. And so he was struggling with, well, that would mean I'd have to give it up, and I don't want to give it up. So we went from a place of we don't want to end up in a hospital and we're willing to do anything to please don't take away the precious, don't take away the marijuana. Then we learned that there was actually Xanax use, which then adds to this case that this might be the source of the anxiety. So we could do all the counseling in the world. We could do maybe neurofeedback. We could do meditative exercise. We could do all kinds of stuff. But if that source chemically is still there, you're still going to have problems. And I think that's the value of looking first what could be what am I doing or experiencing that can cause a lot of anxiety? And sometimes it's not what we think it is. Like in this couple, the dear ones are trying to get better, but in their mind, they just never considered that that could be the source of it. And so they have a decision. And perhaps through other counseling or through other life experience, they changed. And this is common with substance abuse. People who struggle with that underestimate the effects on the nervous system. And then, like we'll be incredibly simple here. Say, like you've seen those charts where you have a nerve ending, and I'll try to do it over here. And an axon and synapse, and these are dendrites. And I'm going to be ultra simple that there's 4 of them. When you take a substance that blocks these 4, the body goes, well, that's not normal. So it starts to create more nerve endings, neurotransmitter receptor sites, so that then the medication stops working. Why? Because now you have 8 and you're more sensitive. Then you pull that medication away. Now you're more sensitive than when you started. Okay. So, this also, I think, is important to say, is that if we wouldn't have the anxiety if we already discovered the source. So we have to be open to looking at what could be causing me anxiety that I'm unaware of. It's just not aware of that. Because if I was aware of it, I wouldn't be so overstressed. And I'm talking about chronic anxiety. I'm not talking about you're almost in a car accident and you have anxiety. Well, there you know what the source is and it goes away. But we're talking about chronic anxiety. So this is a self-exploration process. And it's praying for a better understanding of me, of myself, and what could I be doing. So let's look at this. Simple question. What causes us anxiety? What are the things we do or experience that cause anxiety? Okay. So I was just making up a list. And you could almost just do this without your whole life, but just start with the last month. When did you feel anxiety? And I recommend a journal. You could use a journal that's fancy, or where is the not so fancy one? Oh, one that's kind of a scratch journal practice, so that when you get something you know to be true, and it's really, really, really true, you can put it in this. Even sticky notes. I get thoughts about that. So I could work myself backwards, because that's what I was. I was anxious going to church yesterday. I don't know why. I mean, I really didn't know why. I was driving to church. I started to get back pain, muscle tension. Prayed, of course. Is it a lot of people? Is it people I don't know? Like half the people maybe are new, which is great, but just not knowing them. Is it the crowded space? Is it what my pastor might think of me? That's a whole other story, or what people might think of me. So you can begin to branch off and see that the source, a lot of anxiety is going to be about our thoughts about a situation, and not so much about the situation in and of itself. It might be just the situation in and of itself. Like, I remember going to Disneyland once, well, a couple of times, more than once, and for whatever reason, there was so many people, like, a lot of people, and it was time for it to close, and we're all leaving, and it was like sardines. I mean, like, you couldn't go either which way, and I thankfully didn't feel, claustrophobic. Today I might, and that's a whole other dynamic, but, like, and then I saw them push buttons in security, and I'd never seen this. It's almost as if all the facade of everything around it, they started directing us down ways to get out of the park, secret passages. That there was totally open space. It's actually quite cool. That's probably what they would do in a fire. Yeah, just they just directed us to this nice open space, and we're out in the parking lot quickly. It's a good metaphor for things. Um, I went to a funeral that was going to be 4.5 hours away. It was going to be in the morning, so I felt anxious to get there in time because it started at 10, and I'm going through Seattle, Tacoma, and Olympia down to my uncle's funeral. Probably having anxiety around people I haven't seen in a while, family members I hadn't seen in a long time. The whole masking or not masking thing. What will people think of me if I wear a mask or if I don't wear a mask? Will I cry? Will I get up and share something or not? Okay, that produced anxiety. Oh, let's see. Waiting for test results on my wife's lab work. Waiting for my own test results on lab work. Going to the doctor is anxiety producing. Boy, my mind's drawing a blank. I must be anxious. I'm not. I just had these thoughts and didn't have a chance to write them down. Oh, traffic. I discovered that traffic in Seattle just makes me nervous. Even just being in Seattle makes me nervous. And it takes a lot for me to admit that because I've driven through Seattle zillions of times. But it helped me to realize I'm just going to be anxious driving through this stretch of traffic because it's just how it works. The people, in my opinion, don't drive the same. They're not safe. They're not kind. It's just not fun. The good news is I've been pretty peaceful lately. Feeling feelings with interaction with family members. Okay, so these are things that can cause some anxiety. Let's just go a different route. What makes me anxious in kind of a sense of I know that it's not necessary? Like going to a funeral, being anxious is probably normal. Going to crowded places where there's a pandemic going on could make people feel a little bit uncomfortable. And we'll talk about how to change some of those dynamics. But I know that if I don't sleep well, like if I start sleeping less than 6 hours, I'm just going to get anxious. It's just not good for my nervous system. Just not good for my nervous system. Drinking caffeine. I had a little bit of caffeine today, and later, about 3 or 4 hours, I was wondering if it wasn't decaf because I drink decaf, and it was only going to be one shot of decaf in this tall hemp milk latte, no sugar. And I sometimes wonder maybe it had more caffeine because I feel a little bit wired. Sugar. Um, Sugar can make me nervous, not from the up, but I just am beginning to not have a lot of it in my life. And if I eat something sugary, oh, I never thought about it. I mean, it made me feel good for a while, but maybe now I'm experiencing the after effects of that, um, or when I do have it. Um, Looking at those things that I could take away to help take away the source of anxiety. So I don't really drink alcohol. Well, I don't. I don't do caffeine. I try to get good sleep. If I have a lack of exercise, if I don't exercise, I'm not going to do as well. So exercising to burn off adrenaline. Okay. Um, oh, too much thinking. Let's go to our chart here. So we talked about the feedback loop. To do this exercise, make a list of the things you think are behind your anxiety. And of course, we want to be honest and open. I will say that from experience, I thought it was honest. I thought it was open. But if you still have anxiety, then there's layers of self that still need to be revealed. For me, there was layers of still wanting to be in control, to know everything, to be more than I am. Pride, in spiritual terms, can produce anxiety. Not having things as I want them. So in the process, be open, be honest, and then slow down. This can't be a rushed exercise. In fact, it may take a few days. Just write down every time you're anxious and what's going on there. This simple exercise, you'll be amazed at what you'll start to discover. Prayerful. I could just try in my own strength to discover with my own brain power what's behind my anxiety. But I find that if I invite God of the universe who created me and the world, who knows everything, hey, can you give me a tip? What's behind this for me? And then a wider vision. So when we're in the throes of anxiety, and this is kind of funny, and I've experienced it years ago when you start getting panic attacks. If you've ever had them, you start to go, it was the soda I drank. It might have had a red food coloring in it. I think that's what's making me not feel well. Or I met Fred Meyer. And when you have one at Fred Meyer, you're convinced that Fred Meyer, I'm kind of making this up, but you're convinced that Fred Meyer is the problem. Get out of, for those that aren't around here, Fred Meyer is a department store. I've got to get out of this store and then I'll be safe. But my experience is panic attacks come at all kinds of moments. There seems to be no rhyme or reason for them in a pinpoint fashion. Okay. If you look at broad spectrum, you'll start to get answers. You'll start to go, wow, I didn't sleep for like 3 weeks really well. And I've been doing too much. And I added green tea back into my diet. And I haven't really lifted a finger or anything to do exercise. And I've been storing and collecting people's emotions. That's a recipe for me to get anxious. And how it all works, you don't have to figure it all out. Is it the collecting of people's emotions that affect my nervous system, which cause it not the best sleep? Or is it the caffeine, the green tea that had enough stimulant in it that caused lack of sleep? Or is it just too many of something that caused that? what you do is be in a feedback loop fashion, just start to take out some of these things. So think wide vision rather than pinpoint narrow focus that you're sure that it's this, okay? Those that struggle with OCD will be able to relate. So I just started making a general list, and your list might be specific, might be vague, like general principles, but just start writing. There's no perfectionism here. So the way it came out is too many people. I like a lot of people. I think it's fun. I'm the one who wants to go to the fair. I'm the one who thinks a large church experience can be a lot of fun, or going to um, like a fall harvest carnival. Pumpkin patch is what I was looking for. Oh, yeah, I know what brought this up. I was fine driving in the car, went to Costco on a Friday night. I guess I hadn't been to a Costco on a Friday night in a while. And I was starting to get like bothered, and I started to have thoughts, and that's not a good thing. But like, everybody's steering every way. You have fast going people, you have slow going people, you have people that are older, people that are younger, kids. And I mean, it's just like a madhouse. I wanted to go in and just get what I needed to get and get out. And I thought, well, I'll get a few extra things. And I kept looking for the thing. I came in like 2 or 3 times. I asked the clerk, and I didn't want to go back to the back of the store. I mean, I was literally in line a couple of times. And by the end of it, it was like I was exhausted, and I just didn't want to be around that many people. Had I had the best sleep? See, it's a combination of things, but I kind of thought, why am I doing this now? Maybe just where I'm at in life, I need to just go in the morning when hardly anybody's there. And then I can speed around like I do. But at that point, my nerves were a little bit fragile. I didn't really want to speed around. I felt like I was going to be hit by someone. And that's how anxiety works. It kind of makes us start to go inward and focused and lose perspective. Recovery is gaining perspective. And thankfully, I was able to go, people need love. I started praying. And I did actually have a good conversation. Yes, I said something kind to the checkout person. I thought, why not just try to be happier? Because I'm aware that our thoughts are what add to our suffering or not. Okay. Too many thoughts. I know I'm anxious when I'm thinking too much, but I also know that thinking too much could be actually anxiety. As I was going to be funny today. And maybe I still can be funny. There's a picture. It's been a busy day, but maybe I can do this. Yeah. Good. Who is this? C3PO. As I was preparing today, I thought, another thought, why do we consider him so anxious? because he thinks a lot. He thinks and thinks. He's a computer, okay? And he talks fast. He thinks fast. He knows way too much. And look where it gets him. He's a nervous wreck, I guess, if he has an emotional system. But that's, and the people, other people that don't think so much, don't end up being so afflicted. So how do you stop thinking so much? That would be a key. And what thoughts do we think if we're going to think thoughts? There is a quote which I'd like to share. Hold on. Let's see. This is from the book Spiritual Counsels, My Life in Christ, Father John of Kronstadt. Kronstadt is a city in Russia on an island, kind of a rough area, naval seaport. But I was reading in my morning devotion here. Oh boy, did I do this or what? My place. The gist of this talked about our disposition. And well, I'll read some of this. This is so good. We ought not to allow ourselves to be vexed or irritated by anything. Because if we do become vexed or irritated frequently, we form a habit which is very harmful to us, both morally and physically. Whilst if we bear opposition with equanimity, we form a good and beneficial habit, that of enduring everything calmly and patiently. I love this. This blew my mind. Many occasions for vexation may arise in this life through our innumerable mutual imperfections. And if we were to become irritated upon every such occasion, we would not live more than a few months. That was fascinating. Let me see if I can find. It shouldn't be. Gives you time to be peaceful there. By the way, rushing makes me anxious. That's something I've had now for an understanding, which was really helpful. If I'm rushing, I'm probably not surrendered. Oh, yeah. This is under the chapter, the proper use of the intellect. You mean we can use it improperly? Oh, yes, we can. This is on page 212. I thought this was interesting. You wish to, so the gist of this is this gentleman, John, Father John, was actually learning disabled. He couldn't even write his own name at the age of 9 or 10. grew up extremely poor, felt really guilty about his parents were just scrapping to get him to school, and he still couldn't, he says, even write his name with block letter capitals. He's praying and praying, obviously, about this until one night he's healed. He is then able, he says his mind was just wakened, just awake, and things came easily to him. I saw this also in the story of, I think it's called Gifted Hands, with Ben Carson, who himself struggled in school, struggled, and something snapped in him where he was awakened. And maybe it was through prayer, maybe it was through his mother's prayers, but he then graduates, becomes a neurosurgeon, actually the famous neurosurgeon who was able to separate conjoined twins. And even then praying, it's a great movie based on a true story of how to separate them both, keeping them alive. Brilliant man. So just because one struggles doesn't mean you can't be healed. Anyway, back to Father John. He, it shows you that you think you're at one place, maybe you won't be at that place anymore, okay? So he goes from barely being able to write his own name to graduating the top of his class. He becomes a Russian Orthodox priest. Well, he's already Russian, so he becomes an Orthodox priest. He writes this spiritual journals to himself. This was his own thoughts and things to remind him about what he's learning. And it's a big, thick book. And it's not even in any order. There's no dates or anything. It's just a mishmash. So this is a smaller book that compiles them into subjects. Okay. So this is what he writes about the use of the intellect. You wish to comprehend the incomprehensible, but can you understand how the inward sorrows with which your heart is overwhelmed overtake you? And can you find, except in the Lord, the means to drive them away? Learn it first with the Lord, learn it first with your heart, how to free yourself from sorrows, how to ensure peace in your heart, and then, if necessary, philosophize on the incomprehensible. For if ye then not be able to do that thing which is least, why take ye thought for the rest? I know people near me who, and I mean, I may have done this, we wish to try to comprehend the incomprehensible. We're using our thinking to philosophize and to overthink and think about the future and about this and that. I think we wear our brains out. We're literally overusing our brains. Like, could we be getting way too much information on the internet and just wearing ourselves out? Like, I'm going to be an old person here. When I was a kid, we had 3 channels on TV. Now there's so many channels. As if we had TV, but I was watching something and I said, this is just going way too fast. Like every 5 seconds. And this was a Disney thing on behind the episodes or something. And it's like, I don't want to watch this. It's like flashing lights, just too much stimulation. Can that create anxiety? It can. I could add it to my list. So trying to ponder the incomprehensible without first learning by going into your heart how to be free from sorrows is key. That's the important thing. How to free yourself from sorrows, how to ensure peace in your heart. That's a really good question and a really good skill and something that we need to do. So what are those things that could promote too much thinking? Okay. And anybody who's online is welcome to chat in the comments here. But things that come to my mind are the internet, We would not have ran to this and that on the internet to find out where the origin of this word was, or what this famous person's doing there, or what's happening in the news now. Okay. We would have gotten a newspaper once a day, and we would have just had to wait till tomorrow to see what happened. TV turned itself off at like 11, 12 o'clock at night. If you wanted to look up the etymology of a word, you would have had to, and I did the past couple of days, look up the etymology of word. That's the origin of words. I would have had to go to a dictionary. How to make sourdough bread. I would have had to wait to go to the library and maybe get a book on sourdough bread. I couldn't just look it up. So my point is that technology, because of convenience, has made it so we can just get access to these things. But say, like, I wanted in one day to know how to make sourdough bread, I would have said, well, if it's really important to me, I'll go to the library tomorrow and look it up and see if they had it, and then get it in. Okay. Same thing about the news. I just would have had to wait. So I think we're inundated with too much information. And if I had banking needs, I wouldn't have gone to this. I would have waited till Monday. I would have had to go write out the check and go to the bank to deposit it, or to, yeah, it would have been a different world. It just was a different world. If I wanted to call people, here, it sounds like I'm making, like I'm trying to support going backwards. I'm not, but I'm just saying that if we called our grandparents who lived far away, by the way, that was Seattle. We lived in Federal Way. They would have shouted through the phone. It would have been a quick phone call. And we would have, I don't know what we talked about other than, hey, we're going to see you there or that. Now we can just talk to anybody we want. I can drive and talk at the same time. Is that really good for me? Does this promote too many thoughts? And then did we get hooked into this where we have too much noise and not enough silence? So these are things to consider. Like, anxiety seems to be worse, not better for people. Going to places where it's remote, quiet, hardly any internet. I was conversing with someone over on the peninsula through the telephone. And then I had another conference call with a person who was in treatment, and they were in a place where there wasn't enough Wi-Fi to do a teleconferencing or even talk. They had to stand out in the field. We made it a quick call. Maybe less is better. Maybe too much interaction with the phone is the source of our stress. It's just too stimulating. This sounds like a stretch, but I've shared this before. What if our eyes were not meant to see 4K? And I had this joke with my son. I said, that screen is so sharp. I was going to say at a department store, when you go in and it's like a $6,000, we'll say it's a large warehouse store where when you're going in and there's a TV set dripping with color, like it's dripping, it's so red, and the flower opens up, and it's only $6,000 or whatever. I say, if it gets any sharper, my eyes are going to bleed. And is that too stimulating? is that somehow too many pixels going into my optical nerves. See, it's better than real life. Nothing in real life is that brilliantly colored. Okay. Could that affect my nervous system? I have this pet theory that maybe it is. People go, well, like um, poppy seeds are great. Moderate amounts of opiates could be helpful, but too much of something, our brain goes wacky and wants more of that and gets anxious if it can't have that. Again, too much stimulation with a video game, and then you have to go to real life. Um, it's boring. The teacher talks so slow. And where's her gun? And where is the fast pace? Gotta save the world from the aliens. So I know people I've worked with, and they're really anxious. They can't sleep. And then I find out, are they doing video games? And they start to get nervous, and the family starts. I say, well, it's an undetermined amount of video games. They've been playing at I mean, sometimes 3 or 4 in the morning, but often till 1 or 2, and they want me to help them get better. And when I suggest, well, let's just look at possibly it's the video game till 2 in the morning. If the person was in the military and fighting off terrorists at 2 in the morning, that would be stressful on the body too. At least the person is moving some muscles to burn off that excess energy. But sitting and pushing a button, I'm not sure. It's really important to look at what could be behind this. So we could go on and on about too many thoughts. We should talk, I'll say till the end, the type of situations, because this is broad categories. Poor sleep, poor nutrition, we talked about it. Too many tasks. Like if I'm doing too many things, my body gives me the signal that's too stressful. Well, too many tasks for too many clients, too many tragedies. Notice the word too many. Like maybe there's a right level for me. I shared with a person today, this was funny. I said, now I'm only allowing myself one dark thought moment a day. That sounded funny sharing that. What I mean by dark thought is something relating to the end of the world or what's happening to America or something darker than happier. Why did I limit myself to that? Because if that's all I'm putting in and not seeing the other side, I'm going to get depressed and anxious. It's just not good for me. Even if it's true, it doesn't matter. But for me, this is what works for me. Like, I know there's murders every day. There's bad things happening every day. There are really bad things happening every day. And if I wanted to douse myself in that, I'm going to feel really, really sad and anxious. Okay. But that's not what I can handle. By God's grace, maybe one dark thought I was sharing with someone, and then I'm not going to share dark thoughts anymore until tomorrow. And I might limit myself to not even wanting to talk dark thoughts. But I think setting limits for ourselves. Let's see here. Well, I'm getting kind of towards the solution. Like, we decided just not to watch the media a lot. How is us watching it going to help? And how is it going to affect our personal lives? Like something that's happening over here, like how does this affect me? What difference is going to make? I talked to a friend who's a pastor, and he said something I thought pretty profound. He said it so curtly, I thought it was funny. He says, oh, the end of the world is when you die. And I realized that's what really matters here. For me, this works for me, is to be concerned about my own mortality, my own salvation process, to not be so overboard with the future. I did share this with a friend who did point out, well, what about our children and our grandchildren, etc.? There is a concern for that too. But how is me being doused in it going to help them any? I think I should be prayerful and connected with the truth and connected with good thoughts so that I will be strong during the difficult times. Dousing and steeping and marinating myself in negative thinking and catastrophic thinking, which we know the media loves to do, is manipulative. It's going to manipulate me into, we'll say, a nervous wreck state. That's not going to help. It's not helpful at all. We can study the truth without having to study the untruth. And like we mentioned last time, it's what gets us through a hurricane. How strange that I was using that metaphor of holding on to something, and now people are holding on with hurricanes. I guess I'll define dark thoughts. Dark thoughts for me aren't necessarily watching the news and seeing bad events happen. That's a different category. Dark thoughts are more a thought that could relate to a conspiracy or something evil, something really, really incredibly sad. But it may not even be true, okay? Because who knows the future realistically? And again, if we go back to the unknown future, and if we try to control, it doesn't work so well. So I've found that taking away, I feel better, I sleep better, I exercise better if I just don't watch the media. Fancy that. Or over focus on the government, or over focus on the problems. I'm going a little bit long-winded today. Sorry about that. So I thought of putting things in terms of a circle. So make a circle, and it doesn't have to be a circle, but I just thought, yeah, this is my life, and draw other circles which represent how much you think that the thing is causing a factor towards your anxiety. So as you can see, my biggest factor, risk factor, I've been studying a little bit about risk factors in COVID. A big one for me is thinking. If I don't think so much, just period. And I love prayer. I love neurofeedback, just going, walking in nature, knitting, music, reading, like reading something. If I'm in a good state, it just changes my mood. I'm less anxious. I'm talking chronic anxious, by the way. But even these tools help. Like case in point, I had, oh, you weren't even seeing that. Crazy me. Okay. It was all hidden from you. So I'll reiterate it again. So you draw a big circle, and then these littler circles, and thinking is a big factor. It's a risk factor for me. While sleep, caffeine, and I mean, that doesn't have to be precise. Sometimes I think I feel better with just a smidge of decaf coffee. Because feeling too slow a brain can actually cause anxiety too. We can talk about that. People with poor sleep often are having delta waves during their waking, and they may feel something that looks like a panic attack. But I asked them, do you feel like you could almost pass out and sleep? And they go, Oh, you know what? That's the feeling of loss of control, is that I feel too slow. It's like driving in traffic. Everything can go 55, but the fastest you can go is 30 or 25 miles an hour, and you feel nervous because you can't speed up. That's kind of the ADD-like anxiety. Okay. Events. So events that happen are smaller for me because it's my thinking about the events. So here's a story. And I want to be respectful, but it is somewhat my life too, to share. It involves my mother, who's elderly, who were in the hospital together. There were some anxiety times there too. Will she make it through the surgery? After the surgery, she, I guess I can say, has a colostomy. Um, I was nervous to get training on this because I just didn't know what to expect, and I didn't want to inflict any pain. And just want, it looks like a big owie. Realized that I was catastrophizing this, and someone's in the family should know how to do the general care. Again, my mom's barely out of surgery, and they want to then, here, let's teach you how to do this, and look at this. It's like, by the way, I have to say I'm squeamish. I mean, I can pass out but I just said, look, I'm just going to pretend that I just changed my way of thinking about it, and tried not to catastrophize and not think so much about it. Stop thinking, just be in the moment. Okay. Radical acceptance, which we talked about last week, is a sense of you just stop thinking and accept it. It's I'm not a big on violence, but it's like someone slapping you and say, stop, knock it off, just snap out of it. You can do this. And that seems to work in wartime. And I think we need that experience. I'm remembering, I've never heard this phrase. I was actually at a monastery when I heard it. And someone says, oh yeah, put a big rubber band around your head and snap out of it. And the visual on that. What psychologically or spiritually is going on? I think it's this letting go of control. It's like, stop thinking about it, just rise to the occasion and do this. And I think that's what you need in times of military service. Not that I would know, but it seems from the movies that they help, we'll say, the weaker ones, or the ones that actually are processing feelings, to snap out of it. Let's just focus on getting through this. Don't think this. Go through, and even though there's bullets flying at you every which way, you won't make it if you're thinking so much about it. Just go through it. Yeah. And we should sometime talk about assaultive thoughts, because they are pretty ugly. They do all these horrible things to us, and if we buy into them, we just don't do so well, is my experience. So what you do is you write out all the things that you think could be the sources of your anxiety. Some of you, you're thinking maybe just fine, and it's really a caffeine thing, or it's a poor sleep thing, and just focus on exercising, getting sleep, or events. Okay. Now, if you were to categorize this thinking even further, okay, so really just hone in on this and analyze in a good way, in a prayerful way, in a slowing down way. And maybe we do part 2 here. Why am I anxious? Like, why am I anxious? And for instance, I was anxious about, at one time, getting cancer because I had a test, etc. And funny thing is that I was more, once I prayed about it, I realized I was more afraid of falling apart in the doctor's office crying like a baby than the actual diagnosis. It was strange. Or there were like it was more like, how can I handle this? Like, would I pass out? Would I? And I've had some experiences like that. I had a doctor say, well, you have diverticulitis. And it's like just hearing it just so abruptly, which ended up in a surgery, made me squeamish, and I just needed to lie down. I was told that my wife, abruptly, they just said, well, she has atrial fib. I understand what atrial fib is and the challenges of that. Turns out they were wrong. 20 minutes later, they say, oh, nope, skip everything we showed with you. And I'm not kidding. This is how they did this. But I was so processing this. My wife got her hospital bed to lie down, but I decided to just lay down there on the floor, just because I was repressing feelings, I think. Well, then the feelings seep out into anxiety. So there'll be certain character defects or traits, themes that will happen. Like, am I afraid a lot of what people will think of me? Okay. Maybe going to church. Maybe I won't be liked. Maybe people will judge me, or maybe, it's that self-obsession. Or maybe it's more around of I won't be able to be strong enough to endure something. Say like it's a persecution. What if I deny in my faith tradition Christ? What if I'm not strong enough to do this or to do the right move? But that's not what people think of me. It's more the nuance of I won't be able to do that. Or maybe the nuance is I'm afraid that I might hurt someone in the process, that inadvertently I'll choose some choice that causes people to be harmed. Cases of that is like OCD, where they think they might have actually harmed someone. Okay. All of these things we can't control. So there's certain aspects where there's a theme there, but then there's nuances. And I think going deeper is a good idea, because well, in my case, once I realized, wow, so if I fall apart and cry in the doctor's arms, how bad is that? See, then anxiety goes down. It really does go down. A little bit of understanding helps. Other aspects of anxiety. There are only a few cores. Oh, feelings, feeling out of control. Does it go any deeper than that? Like, it's the feeling there is I'm a bug on its back. Just there's nothing I can grasp on. Like the kid in the pool I shared. It's just like this total feeling of out of control. And if you accept, well, I'm out of control. Or back to the worry what people think of me. That actually is something I need to get over, like vainglory. By God's grace, not be concerned about when all people speak well of you, because that's how they would treat a false prophet. So we live in my opinion, perilous times, at least from my point of view, where there are going to be challenges for people and freedoms. Will we find the courage to speak out? And then there's a good example of anxiety is what will happen if we speak out, if we do this or that, and where will we need the courage to be able to handle such things? Or will we have support? Oh, I forgot this one. Feeling abandoned. That's another big root. That's probably, another aspect of, if it's not what people think of me, is will they still love me? Will they still care about me? Will they be there? And I think this is an opportunity for us to reach out to each other. And on a positive, the other positive is there's a lot of positives in this. One is we will grow like we never would have thought we can grow. For years, I thought my grandparents and other people were 10 times tougher than I am. And will we ever see a Great Depression? Will we ever live during wartime, of which my parents and my grandparents went through? Well, maybe this is the time that we're going through something like that. And will we look for the good in this? Or will we look for the terroristic things? There's a story of a holy man, Saint Paisius, we call him. He was in war, but he has this simple metaphor, and I've used it lots. A bee flies around looking only for flowers, beautiful flowers to find the nectar to produce honey. A fly only looks for garbage, or worse. He calls it dirt, and to be polite, to land on. And it doesn't look for flowers. You don't see a fly really land on a flower. So we have the opportunity to be a bee, to look for the good in everything. Or we can be the fly and look for the negative in everything. And I guess I'll finish with this. The same saint talks, if there's a saint that really would be about positive thinking and psychology, would be Saint Paisius. But he says that this is Christianity. When Christ was on the cross, he had two thieves on either side of him. He had a thief on his right who, in the midst of dying, guilty as sin for his being a thief, can see that this is Christ, can see that this is the one who can do miracles. The other one is negative, railing against him, saying, if you can save if you can save others, why can't you even save yourself? This guy is on the cross dying, but says, don't say that to him. In essence, he's confessing he is the Christ. And he asks one question, like, will you remember me when you go into your kingdom? And Christ says to him, today you'll be with me in paradise. Today you'll be with me in paradise. The first person that we know of that enters into this paradise place. Saint Paisius says, this story is true, this happens this way, but it kind of represents all of humanity. This thief, constantly negative, constantly thinking about negative. He said his thought factory in his brain just could only see the negative. A fly could not see any good. Even though this guy's a thief, still not positive, still was hopeful, still could see the good in the situation. I think about that. What must have been like to live your whole life apart from Christ? You meet Christ on your death bed, which is a cross. In a sense, it's the worst day of your life, but it's the best day of your life. And as he enters paradise, this life is so small, infinitesimally small, a vapor compared to the life we'll get in the next life. And I think that's what gives me comfort and helps me understand the big picture in all things. So with that, I wish you a good week. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out to us. And you guys take care and stay safe in that world out there. Bye-bye.